Okay, as we wrap up session 6, which is really the last long session, I'll have a kind of concluding session right after this. We're going to go through somewhat of a checklist of what are some keys to a successful pray and go. Now, the reality of this is your context, once again, will determine how you do some of these things. So even as I give you these keys to success, they may be areas that you have to adapt for your context and for your ministry. So I am giving you these keys to success with the understanding that there will always be outliers, that there will always be exceptions. The first of these, though, I really believe, I cannot think of a situation where there would be a good exception. You could find one, and you can let us know at some point where you have a definitive exception. But this one is huge. This one is one of the big issues that will make your pray and go successful. Number one, keep it going year round. One of the reasons that programs or ministries fail is there's a surge of excitement, people get involved in it, and then it becomes routine or wearisome, and then it just begins to taper off. Pray and go is designed where there's never supposed to be this huge surge. There may be some initial interest or excitement about it, but there's not just huge push of thousands of people going. It is meant to be a plodding, incremental, and successful ministry. Hear that again. It's meant to be a plodding, incremental, and successful ministry. If you do not do so year-round, the momentum, whether it is a slow momentum or a fast momentum, is likely to go away. And the sense that this is something that is a part of the DNA of the church will go away as well. Think of pray and go almost in the same sense that you would think of your worship services every week. That's where the church is gathering, and you do so consistently. Now, you need to do so consistently where the church is going. Don't think of pray and go as an optional program activity. Think of pray and go in the same way that you think of worship services. The people have gathered. With rare exception, we're going to gather every week. And then with rare exception, we're going to go every week. Pray and go is based upon the year-round necessity of keeping the momentum going. Which brings us to another key to success. And hear this one well. It's kind of a corollary to number one. Be prepared to stick with it. You know what? No pray and go is going to be perfectly successful. Even though I've urged you to make sure you recruit people with high accountability, if they can't show up, then they're going to make certain they have their own substitute. You're still going to have some people that aren't going to do it. There are going to be some down moments. No ministry that has human beings involved is going to go perfectly. Stick with it. This type of ministry is more building than it is a meteoric rise. It's just a steady build. Be prepared to stick with it. Sometimes when you feel like, God, do we really want to keep doing this? Don't give up on this for at least a couple of 3 years. Keep on pushing on and watch what the sustained momentum and the building of this will do in your church. Be prepared to stick with it. Third key to success. Take no more than 2 weeks off at a time. This is the area where I recognize that there may be some exceptions. There may be exceptions that are weather related. There may be exceptions that I can't even anticipate. I will simply say this. If you take a break that is longer than 2 weeks, there will begin a diminishment of momentum. There will begin to be a sense, it'll be like taking off from church for more than 2 weeks at a time. Brad Wagner and I did a consultation one time, and one thing we learned is those sabbaticals may be good for a pastor. Long sabbaticals may not be so good. In this particular extreme case, the pastor took a year off. Well, he was gone so long, people almost forgot who he was. And he lost the church as a result of that. That's an extreme example. But the point is this. When you have something going, keep it going consistently, particularly if it's not meant to be a short-term burst, if it's meant to be something that is ongoing as part of the going of the church. I've mentioned also in a previous session that we have a resource called Invite Your One. Invite Your One is supposed to be one of those pushes, one of those times where you get people, a lot of people invited, and there's energy, and then you stop it for a while. That is not the same thing with Pray and Go. Pray and Go, if at all possible, only in the rarest exceptions, take no more than 2 weeks off at a time. What does Pray and Go do? It gives you the outward focus of the Great Commission. Many churches are fighting and are inwardly focused and have tension and conflict because they're asking for things for me. They're asking for things for what I want. This is my preference. This is my desire. What this does, it gives you an outward focus, which brings up a corollary. It defeats the inward focus of the deadly Trinitarian concept, not biblical Trinitarian, the deadly Trinitarian concept of me, myself, and I. It does not put the focus on what I want as much as how can I serve God through this church. Now hear this well. Pastor, I know that you have a lot of responsibilities on you, and everybody expects that if it's going to get done, the pastor will do it. Well, then Pray and Go, because it's part of your ongoing ministry. It is something that you do on a sustained level. You must be ready to lead the charge. It doesn't mean you do the work. It doesn't mean that you're gone every week. It means that you are a visionary cheerleader for Pray and Go. If you aren't behind it, don't even try it. Pray and Go is meant to be inclusive of many, many people, but it also needs the vision of the pastor, needs that person who is ready to say, this is a part of the ministry of the church. We as a church are going to pray and go. So hear me well, leading it, pastor, is not the same thing as doing all the work. As a matter of fact, if you do all the work, Pray and Go will probably collapse upon the responsibility of your own shoulders. It needs to be equipped out, farmed out. It needs to be given out to others. But the people in the church need to know that Pray and Go is your priority. Do you really believe in the efficacy and the mandate of the Great Commission? If you do, you will say this is a way that is low encumberment, that it makes it where anybody can participate. This is a way that we can keep our church constantly outwardly focused. Now, who do you need some of your highest commitments from? You need your highest commitments from the coordinator, the overall leader of this program. It may be the pastor, but I really hope that it is not. I hope that it is a lay volunteer or maybe a staff person within the church. You need the highest commitment from that person that has oversight over all of these points that we have just covered. You need a high commitment from the MAP strategist. Let me again emphasize how important the map is. The map is that tool that shows how many homes you have reached and how many homes you plan to reach. It can have numerical counts on it. Some of you can do things with this that can just make it look very, very exciting. It can be a ministry in of itself. It can move the church to a new level of enthusiasm. The map strategist as well as the coordinator need to be high commitment. And finally, the person that is responsible for the prayer response, whether that person is doing it himself or herself, or whether they have a team behind it, those are 3 high commitment levels that you need. Now, the prayer walker warriors, those who are going out maybe once a month for 45 minutes, you want them to be committed, but after all, it's 45 minutes. The other 3 have an ongoing responsibility. It's just part of who they are. And without a high commitment from each of these 3, the program is likely to fall. The program is likely to be a failure. So make certain that even if you're in a small church, that you have high commitments from the coordinator, the MAP strategist, and the prayer response person or team. Which brings up this next point. A successful Pray and Go ministry keeps thorough records. You're obviously hoping the MAP strategist would be that person that is keeping track. But you know, records is more than this is how many homes we visited. It'd be great if you had all types of stories in the midst of the records. Maybe an embedded email of someone who talks about this is what happened and who I encountered on the Pray and Go. Maybe the prayer response team talking about some answered prayers and the ways that their ministry has responded. Keep thorough records because, number one, you want to see how many homes you've covered and how many homes you have yet to cover. Keep thorough records and you will begin to see the excitement build. As you build out that map, home by home, street by street, block by block, area of town by area of town, as you build out that map, you'll also see a building momentum and excitement in the church. As you see the numbers begin to click up, if you have counters on number of homes covered, which I recommend as well, as you begin to see those click up, there will be an increasing excitement. Look at how many homes we have prayed over in our community. This ministry of keeping records should be one of your most important. Don't think of record keeping as a mundane clerical task. Think of it as a part of the Great Commission imperative that you're about. Because you're going to fall on yourselves and you're going to have conflicts about where we go and what we're doing unless you are keeping thorough records. This ministry should be one of your most important. Treat it that way. Make certain the overall ministry of Pray and Go is an important ministry as well. As I indicated, don't just simply look at this as another program, which is not. Don't look at this as just another plug-and-play resource, which is not. Just as the church gathers to worship, look at this as the church leaving, going to fulfill the Great Commission. It is just that important. That is why this particular ministry should be one of your most important, and that's why you need to treat it that way. But on the inverse, don't see this ministry as a magic bullet. I've referred to the magic bullet in previous resources that we have. The magic bullet, as far as I can tell, has its origin in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. It was then called the Pristine Bullet. And it was purportedly a single bullet shot by Lee Harvey Oswald from the Texas Book Depository. As that bullet entered into the back of John F. Kennedy, took an immediate dive, then took another path going straight, then took a right, and then took another path going down into John Connally, and then moved within his own body, and then came out and fell on the floorboard of the car, of the limousine, and there was hardly any marks on it whatsoever. That's why the Pristine Bullet has gotten a lot of ridicule. Of course, it has its defenders, but those of you who understand the assassination, you know there had to be more than one gunman, but that's for another story. The point is this. That Pristine Bullet was the bullet that could do everything. It shot Kennedy, it shot Connally, and there was no wear on it whatsoever, no wear and tear. Many people look at things like Pray and Go or any type of program or plug-and-play type of resource as a magic bullet. Oh, if we just do this, it'll do great. No, it's not a matter of us delivering to you this digital resource. It's a matter of you executing the Great Commission. This is nothing more than a tool, but it can be a highly effective tool if you use it pretty closely to the way that we prescribe it. Don't look at this ministry as a magic bullet, but look at it as something that could be highly effective if you follow through in Great Commission obedience. I've made this point, but I want to put it on the checklist of keys to successful Pray and Goes. Recruit with high expectations. Don't say, well, anybody sign up for Pray and Go. Say, we have this dynamic ministry where we're going to ask, and then you explain the Pray and Go hanger. You explain going out for 45 minutes once a month or once a quarter. And you say, this is going to be our new thrust. This is going to be our ongoing thrust for the Great Commission. And we want those who are committed, who will give us this 45 minutes to an hour every single month or quarter, as the case may be. Recruit with those high expectations. Hear this well. It is better to have a few high committed members in Pray and Go than several low committed members. The low committed members will, their lack of commitment will spread in a negative way. Likewise, the high commitment members will spread in a positive way. If you have low commitment people in Pray and Go, the ministry will be taken as an ancillary ministry that's just about to fall away, just like everything else you think has done in the church. If you have high committed members, you will watch this thing sustain. Recruit with high expectations. You will commit to, for example, once a month. In the event that you cannot come, you will find someone to take that role for you. You will go to the places that have been prescribed for you, and you will report back. It's not burdensome, but it's high expectation. And as I indicated earlier, there are some high commitments that are higher than even the Pray and Go walker warriors, the coordinator, the map strategist, the prayer response team or person. But regardless, recruit for this ministry with high expectations, not just to everyone come and sign up for it, anybody that's breathing, but those who are really willing to make this modest commitment once a month or once a quarter. Keep in mind how important the map is. The map is very important. Certainly it's important for record keeping. Certainly it's important for assignments as people pray and go. But you know why else it's important? It demonstrates to the body, to the congregation, that this church is really praying and going. It shows the homes that have been covered in prayer and the people who have physically gone there. It shows that this church not only prays and goes, but it cares for the community as it does so. I cannot overstate the importance of the map. I cannot overstate how critical it is to keep that map somehow in front of the congregation, whether in the foyer or whether it's something that's a part of the regular worship service during the prayer time and you show it on one of the screens. But keep the map very, very visible. The map is very important. Another thing to keep in mind for a successful pray and go, you have to define your community clearly. If you have people going into areas that's not really part of the community you're trying to reach, the connections will not be there, will not be nearly as effective. So at the onset, you need to have defined your zip code or your radius, and you need to say, this is our community. This is the address that God put us here in an Esther-like fashion for such a time as this. Define your community very clearly and let that be the place where you are doing the Jerusalem of Acts 1:8, where you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem. I mentioned this earlier, but it's another important checklist and why pray and goes will be successful. Pray before you go, then pray as you go. Pray, then go, then pray. Before you go out, pray. As you go out, pray. As you come back, pray. Let prayer be without ceasing. Let it be one of the things that is just inherent in this ministry. Keep prayer at the forefront, not simply one prayer at a home, but praying before you go, praying as you go, praying at the home, and praying when you get back. Keep that aspect of ministry before you. Pray, pray, pray. Keep this ministry also as a high profile in the worship services. I've given you one example to put the map before the people and show them where people have gone. But merely the pastor mentioning this on an ongoing basis raises the effectiveness and raises the awareness and raises the fact that this will be a sustainable ministry. If the pastor is behind it, then the pastor is going to be the one who will lead the charge, and the church will more than likely follow. Keep the ministry high profile in the worship services. That's when most people are gathered at any one time, and you want to remind the gathered church that they're also to be the going church. You want to remind them as they are here together now, there will be some of you who will be going more. And it'll be a motivation, hopefully, that more people will be a part of the pray and go or the going ministry. Another important checklist for you is to make pray and go fit your context. I've said that in a number of ways at a number of different times. There is a lot of flexibility in this ministry. We do think the skeletal form of it is critical, but there is a lot of flexibility because different contexts require different elements. So ask the question. Tom has given us in Pray and Go this particular structure and outline. What is it that we might need to do a little bit differently? That's why this is not a pure plug and play program, but it is a ministry of praying and going that can be adapted to your context. I've mentioned the fact that inclement weather may be a part of when you do pray and go. And you may need to have a different schedule than 11-2, 11-2, 11-2, 11-2. But you need to have good reasons behind it. Don't just simply say, oh, our context is different and just change it out of convenience. No, is there a strong, compelling reason that your context is pushing you to do something different? There's a lot of flexibility, but don't do changes for the sake of changes. Make sure your context has mandated that. I want to perhaps step on a few toes here, but I'll go on and do it. It is a reasonable expectation that all church staff should have some level of participation in Pray and Go. Part-time staff, full-time staff, ministry staff, support staff. Pray and Go should be so ingrained in the ministry of the churches that you cannot imagine someone who receives a paycheck from the church not being involved in it. That is a huge statement. The worship leader should be in Pray and Go. The small groups leader should be in Pray and Go. The nursery coordinator, if it's a paid position, should be in Pray and Go. Anytime someone is on the staff of the church, there should be an expectation. Do they have the same expectations as the rest of the members? Well, in the famous words of Jonathan Howe and Tom Rainer, it depends. But everybody that is on staff should be a part of Pray and Go. It's a reasonable expectation that if you're asking the church to do this, then others should be involved as well. Here's something I want you to do. Watch prayandgochurch.com, our website, for updates and new resources. That's the beauty of this. We'll continue to update. We'll continue to get stories that will help us to refine it more and more. So what you're seeing now may be completely updated in just a few months and a few weeks. So keep at the Pray and Go site to see what's going on, and you can give us feedback as well. Okay, here are your 2 questions, and these will be your last 2 questions for discussion among the group. What do you think are the keys to success for Pray and Go in your church? We've talked about keys to successful Pray and Go generally. What do you think are the keys to success for your church? And finally, even though it may be self-evident, why is the Pray and Go map important? Why is the Pray and Go map important? Okay, in just a moment, I'm going to do a brief wrap-up. You've been through virtually all of Pray and Go. You're ready to start assembling the ministry together. You're ready to start beginning it. So get these questions answered. Get ready to move on. Come back for just 4 or 5 minutes of our conclusion, and we will then leave it with you as God's Spirit begins to work through you as your church begins to pray and go. We'll see you then.